Prince William stood at the window of Kensington Palace, jaw clenched, watching the drizzle streak down the glass, like the chaos unraveling around him. The royal family had weathered scandals before: divorces, leaked tapes, wild tabloid headlines. But this was different. This was a direct threat from inside the palace walls. And the threat had a name: Prince Andrew. In the public's eyes, Andrew had already fallen. His ties to Epstein, the disastrous BBC interview, and the relentless headlines had left his image in tatters. Charities had dropped him, politicians were demanding answers, memes flooded the internet, painting him as the crown's rotten apple. But what the public didn't know was how far Andrew was willing to go to protect what little he had left, and how much damage he could still inflict. Inside Royal Lodge, Andrew had become a ghost of himself. The once proud royal now spent nights pacing alone, whiskey in hand, clutching at whatever dignity he could salvage. His estate, once a symbol of prestige, now felt like a prison of his own making. But what made it dangerous wasn't just his isolation, it was what he had stashed in that old oak cabinet in the corner of his study. Decades of handwritten letters, Queen Elizabeth's private notes, financial documents, whispered confession secrets. Real ones, and William knew it. When Andrew started contacting journalists, real ones, the type who make empires fall, it was no longer just a scandal, it became a full-blown crisis. William had tried everything to avoid this moment. He'd begged his father to act, but King Charles had grown old and cautious, preferring to let time dull the sharp edges of controversy. William didn't have that luxury. In an age of live tweets and viral exposés, silence wasn't an option. It was complicity. Catherine had been the first to see the change in him. He stopped smiling. He stopped sleeping. He started planning. The heir to the throne had always carried the weight of the monarchy on his back, but now he carried the burden of being the one who had to act, not just as a prince, but as a future king. The tipping point came on a stormy Thursday evening. Mr. Edward, William's trusted advisor, arrived with a thin file in hand. Inside, evidence of Andrew's emails to a European journalist. The contents weren't just embarrassing, they were lethal. Mentions of off-the-record conversations with the late Queen, allegations of hidden money trails, even references to Princess Diana, the kind of emotional shrapnel that could destroy public trust forever. William said nothing for a full minute after reading it. Then, with icy calm, he instructed Edward to begin surveillance. Every call, every meeting, every movement, not a single detail was to be missed. "He's not my uncle right now," William said flatly. "He's a threat to the crown." What made it worse was that Andrew didn't care. Or maybe he cared too much. His calls with friends were filled with drunken rants about betrayal, abandonment, and revenge. He told one former military buddy, "If they strip me of everything, I'll bring it all down with me." And he wasn't bluffing. He knew too much, and William knew he had to be stopped before any of it reached the press. That's how the confrontation was born. Not in a grand meeting or a formal announcement, but in the quiet tension of a family cracking from within. A prince planning to knock on his uncle's door, not to speak, but to end something. Because sometimes the real battle doesn't happen in war rooms. It happens in living rooms, behind locked doors, with history hanging in the balance. And this one was just getting started. Rain lashed the windows of Royal Lodge, each droplet hitting like a warning shot. Prince Andrew stood in front of the fireplace, glass of whiskey in hand, staring at the flames but seeing nothing. His heart pounded like a war drum, not from fear, but from fury. They were turning on him, his own blood, after everything he'd given. After all the years of public service, of loyalty to the crown, they were preparing to cast him out like trash. He wasn't stupid. He knew the walls were closing in. The whispers, the sudden drop in calls from the palace, the eerie silence from Charles. Then there was William, cold, quiet, calculating. Andrew had always underestimated the boy, but the boy wasn't a boy anymore. He was a storm, dressed in royal blue. The knock on the door came sharp and sudden. Andrew froze. The butler appeared, pale and hesitant. "His Royal Highness, Prince William, sir." Andrew didn't answer. He simply turned, adjusted his collar, and set the glass down. When William walked in, his coat soaked from the rain, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. They didn't exchange pleasantries. William didn't sit. He stood firm, hands clasped behind his back, eyes steady and unreadable. "Uncle," he said calmly, "we need to talk." Andrew laughed bitterly. "No cameras, no press, just you and me. How royal of you." "This isn't a negotiation," William replied, voice like stone. "You've been contacting journalists. You've threatened to leak personal documents. You've made yourself a danger to this family." "Danger?" Andrew snapped. "I am this family. You think you can just erase me with a press release?" "You've erased yourself," William said. "With every call you made, with every page you threatened to sell, you turned your back on us the moment you chose blackmail over dignity." Andrew stepped closer, red-faced, breathing hard. "You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to become the villain while your father hides behind protocol and you play the noble heir? You became the villain the moment you put your ego above the monarchy." The silence between them felt like thunder. Then Andrew's voice dropped, bitter and quiet. "I have letters from the Queen, financial reports, confessions. You want to protect the crown? You better be ready to lose everything first." William didn't blink. "We're already losing everything because of you." Andrew reached into a nearby drawer and tossed a thick manila folder onto the table. "Take a look. That's just a preview. I've kept records, things you wouldn't believe." William stepped forward slowly, picked up the folder, and opened it. Inside were old letters, handwritten by Queen Elizabeth, coded notes from Charles during the Diana years, even blurry copies of private bank transfers. William didn't flinch. He simply looked up. "You kept these as weapons," he said, "not as memories. That's who you are now." "I kept them as insurance." "No," William said flatly. "You kept them because you've always feared being irrelevant." Andrew's hand curled into a fist. "I fought for this family, in war, in diplomacy. I was the Queen's son. And now," William said coldly, "you're a liability." The room was thick with tension, but William wasn't there to argue. He was there to deliver consequences. "There will be a royal council tomorrow, a formal vote, but make no mistake. This is the end. Your titles, your home, your place in this family." Andrew stared at him, stunned. "You wouldn't dare." William turned toward the door. "Watch me," and with that, he left Andrew standing alone, the fire crackling behind him and the past crumbling at his feet. Buckingham Palace was silent, not the peaceful kind, but the kind that weighed on your chest, the kind that made even the ticking of a clock sound like thunder. Inside the Grand Council room, every eye was on Prince William as he stood before the royal table, a thick file in his hand and a storm in his eyes. King Charles sat at the head of the table, face pale, hands folded tightly. Catherine was beside William, calm but watchful. A few trusted advisors lined the room, no one speaking. William placed the folder down and opened it with precision. Inside were the intercepted emails, the call logs, the evidence that Andrew was willing to burn the palace down if he was forced out. He made contact with a journalist based in France, William said clearly, offered them access to sensitive records, handwritten notes from the late Queen, financial ledgers, and personal communications between royal members, all in exchange for money and a platform. No one gasped. Everyone already knew, but hearing it said aloud in this room was a knife twist. Charles looked away, jaw tightening. "And what does he say now?" "He claims he was protecting himself," William replied, "that he never intended to go through with it." "But he did," Catherine added, her voice steady. "He made the calls. He wrote the emails. That alone is enough." Charles looked old in that moment, not just tired, worn out. The kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from lack of sleep, but from losing something that once held your heart. "He's my brother," the king murmured. "But ow? This cannot be ignored." William nodded. "We either let the public watch us rot from the inside or we act." The vote was short, the decision unanimous. Prince Andrew would be stripped of all remaining titles and privileges. He would be forced to leave Royal Lodge, effective immediately. Across town, Andrew sat slumped on the edge of his bed. The call had come minutes ago. He didn't cry. He didn't rage. He just sat there, staring at the floor like it had betrayed him too. The staff had already begun packing. His closet, once full of tailored suits, was now a pile of hastily folded clothes. His medals, his portraits, even the old war photo he loved, all boxed. At the palace gates, journalists gathered like vultures. Flashes exploded as Andrew stepped outside carrying only a single suitcase and an envelope tucked under his arm. He didn't speak, he didn't look up, he just got into the waiting car and disappeared into the foggy morning like a ghost no one would miss. From a quiet window at Kensington Palace, William watched it unfold on the news. The footage of Andrew being escorted away, the headlines screaming about disgrace and downfall. He didn't smile, he didn't celebrate. He just stood there, arms folded, jaw set. The cost of doing what was right had never felt so high. Later that night, he sat with Catherine in their private sitting room. The fire crackled softly. She reached for his hand and held it tight. "You did what you had to do," she said. "I know," he whispered, "but it still hurts." A few miles away, Andrew sat in a rented flat. Small, gray, quiet. He opened the envelope he had brought with him. Inside were the old letters from the Queen, her handwriting delicate, her words gentle. He read one line over and over. "Remember, no matter what, carry yourself with honor." His eyes welled up, not from anger, but something worse, regret. Outside, London moved on. Headlines faded, cameras turned elsewhere. But in two different rooms, two very different men sat with the same silence in their hearts, both changed forever by a family war no one would ever fully understand.